Hello, this is Melissa. It is Real History, and today is the 16th of January, 2025. And it's kind of hard for me to believe that the month of January is halfway over. It's just, I don't know. Is that a sign of my age? How quickly time is flying? I don't know. But there you have it. And I am talking today. I just temporarily titled this Ryan Down Under. So, because I'm talking with Ryan down under, but I usually don't make an official title on it until I listen to it and go, oh, this is what it should be called. But for now, it's Ryan Down Under. And hey, Ryan, how are you?
Good. Thank you very much, Melissa.
Yeah. Well, so do you want to tell people where down under you are?
Let's just say it is the Victorian Alps. That might be a bit of a...
Oh, so you're not going to tell us your exact latitude and longitude? No, don't. Please don't.
About 60, is it 60 south? I think it's about
no,
60.
no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. The Victorian Alps is good enough. But the camera, I just want to get less ceiling and yeah, perfect. Okay, great. That's great.
The camera's sitting up on an old yogurt bucket.
Oh.
High tech.
Okay.
Very high.
Yeah, good. So how long have you been? I don't think we were talking before, you're not from the Victorian Alps.
No, I grew up in Sydney. So that's what, about, I guess for you guys, about 1,000 miles north on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up surfing on the beach and doing the whole, coastal lifestyle, which like I loved, and I never thought I'd live in the mountains. It's just never it wasn't even a possibility or a vague thought. It was just never there. And then one day it just sort of hit me and I came out here and I've never been able to leave.
Really?
Yeah, I've not been to the coast for, I don't know now, 5 years.
Wow.
I haven't even seen the ocean for 5 years. So, that doesn't make any sense to me, but there it is, so.
Well, I was trying, I didn't even ask about what was on the ceiling because I recognize a Chinese lantern when I see one, but behind you, there's a weird round thing on the wall, and I thought beside it would look like a snow shovel. I said, what's that weird round thing on the wall? And you said they were snowshoes, so they're just...
Yeah, and the round thing is my hat, so that's I guess for anyone around the world, that's the classic Australian Akubra hat that people come here to buy as a souvenir.
Okay.
We wear them because they're here, I guess. I don't know. We wear them because they're just a hat. So.
Okay, tell the yogurt bucket that you need less ceiling.
Again, it's moved.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, perfect. Now that lets me take a look at something else back there. I can't make it out. Is it a drum?
Oh yeah, that's a medicine drum that I made out of
Out of what?
It's made from a red deer hide.
Oh.
So you kind of soak the skin and you stretch it around the drum and let it dry and learn to play it, I guess.
Okay.
Another part of the bigger story, I guess.
Well, I'm kind of all over the place. I haven't focused in, but you sent me pictures. You're a carpenter by trade. And you've done some really beautiful work, made kitchen cabinets and tables. That's just some of the things that you sent me, some things in local restaurants and so forth. Do you want to dive in and give a little bit of your history and your trade and how you discovered Alan? I mean, you want to just talk for a while and I'll sit back and tell you when the yogurt bucket needs to be
the high tech here in Victoria. It's a really sort of dense story, and I find it hard to kind of sift out the larger parts, because it's also integral, I guess, or integrated as well. But like I grew up on the beaches, and I always wanted to be a carpenter. I just thought that was the best job for me, and I loved doing woodwork at school, and I always came first in the class whenever it was like something that I enjoyed doing. And then by the time I was a teenager looking for a job, there was no work. It was the mid to late 90s in Australia, and we were going through kind of like, we were post-recession anyway, but we hadn't gone into the full-blown housing market yet. So carpenters in Australia were kind of handymen unless you got bigger building projects. That it was very rare to see a new house go up because we just didn't have the money. So where I go in the story there's but anyway, in 2005, actually, I enrolled in university, which I guess is the American college equivalent. And it was in one of the breaks between the semesters that I actually had the internet, which, you know, sounds crazy, but in 2005, that was, you know, that was a big thing. Like having your own internet connection in your house was a big thing. But university, where I was in university, it was becoming more online. So they were suggesting to get that, to hand in assignments or to communicate with lecturers and tutors and stuff like that. So I got the internet put on, and I was in between semesters, and I had all this time all of a sudden. And I remember I'll never forget it actually, because I remember sitting down at the computer and I was so bored, and I just remembered that my father had this book about a Marilyn Monroe conspiracy theory, and how she knew JFK and how she died and all this stuff, and all these theories about it. And I thought, I just remember typing in conspiracy theory into Google, and believe it or not, the first thing that came up was Alan Watt. And I just thought, what the hell is this? Okay, so I looked in it, and straight away I saw the website and all the stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in an X-Files episode or something. And then I listened to one of his blurbs, or I think it may have even been the Cutting Through series from memory, because when he's sitting on the couch.
Oh, those are Reality Check.
Oh, the Reality Check.
He had the Reality Check 1. It's still on the website for free download. It has always been available for free download, and we also sell it as a disc. And I've lowered the price of everything, but I think you can also, I mean, I know you can buy it as a DVD. I just can't tell you right now what it costs. But yeah, it's download, and that's where he's sitting on the sofa, smoking his, you know, he hasn't quite figured out to run the comb or brush through the hair, you know.
It was just so raw and so honest and just so grounded. It was perfect for me anyway, because I just saw a man that knew something, and he just thought, oh, I'll just sit down, I'll just say it. And so I listened, and I'll never forget the feeling of, like, it felt like I was going 1,000 miles an hour, and it felt like the wind was in my face, and I just knew straight away that I've got to learn whatever he said. I have to learn it. And none of it made sense. I couldn't even understand most of the words he was saying. I'm Googling words and getting the dictionary out what this means. And then I'm like I'll never forget when he said there's an agenda, and that just like a bell went off. I'm like, of course, there has to be, like, all these like little things in my sort of earlier years, like as a teenager growing up and thinking like that's not right, and that shouldn't be like that. And you know, we had a big thing over here in the mid 90s when France, when France started testing nuclear weapons out in South Pacific in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so against it. It was just a massive thing in Australia where we just didn't want it to happen.
I didn't even know about that until, I mean, I was completely unaware that that happened. So.
Yeah, I think it was like 95, 94, 95. They started testing nuclear weapons out in some of the atolls out in the South Pacific, wherever the whatever French Polynesian island they picked. And they just didn't care. They just did not care what the world thought.
Mm-hmm.
So they just absolutely hammered that place again, and very similar to what they did at the Bikini Atoll. It was very similar.
Mm-hmm.
They just demolished the place. And so because we're so close to it, it was just in our backyard essentially. So we felt the need to sort of at least push back a bit, but nothing happened. And you start to realize that there's this bigger agenda going on.
Mm-hmm.
That when someone can articulate it in some sort of meaningful way, it just started to click. And so here I am doing a finance degree, and I'm listening to Alan, and it was such a diversion in the direction I was going, but I had to leave that path and just go down the rabbit hole, I guess, and figure it all out. And I'm glad I did. I mean, it's been a strange, wonderful path, but it's not been easy. You know, you don't go down this rabbit hole to gain anything in the worldly sense.
Yes.
You know? Like I did. I mean, I went down there to gain the knowledge and gain that perspective, but I had no idea of how much you'd lose.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I was unprepared for that. But I'd already kind of been on a losing path anyway at that point, which is why I went to uni, to sort of realign to some sort of path of, you know, normalcy, or some sort of prescribed path, I guess, you know, and make a better life for myself. But I mean, I did a little bit of work experience in the industry right toward the end of the degree, and it was horrible. I hated every moment of it, you know. And it wasn't.
Did you work at a bank or a different kind of financial?
Yeah, I went to a finance investment firm in Sydney, on the however many stories up in this building, and the view was amazing. The suit I was wearing felt great. You know, I'm doing this thing, you know, it's amazing. But the people and the way they behaved, and, you know, just the whole feeling of the industry was so sticky, and I lasted 2 weeks and I left, never went back.
Really? Wow. That is quite the allergic reaction.
Yeah, and I had one semester to go, so it was only, you know, what's a semester like? I think it's only about 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I had weeks to go and a few exams, and I was just like, I'm never ever going to walk in that door ever again. That was it.
Wow.
And so then I just kind of went full blown conspiracy theorist. And that was back when, I mean, 2006, 2007. This is really before there was the term conspiracy theorist, I mean, that wasn't really around then. Not like it is today, where it was like, oh,
well, now it's like now you're a Nazi or a denialist. I mean, it's a really bad thing to be a conspiracy theorist, but it's the kind of label that or anti-Semite, you know what I mean? I mean, it's just, then everybody knows you're a total nutter, and stay away. And, you know, nothing that you say is, there's a couple of things. I want to not derail you from your path of, you know, hitting the wall there and then becoming the full-on conspiracy theorist. But there are a couple of things that you said that were interesting. The first is talking about being at uni and having access to the internet in 2005, and that was a rarity. And it reminded me of Alan always telling us that they use different countries for test beds for different ideas, and they bring up technology in certain places where other people don't have access to it. And for me, I don't want to get into, what I was doing in LA, blah, blah, blah. But before I went the agency path, I was working at another corporation. And in that corporation, because of what I was doing, I wasn't that high up the ladder or anything, but because of what I was working on, I was the one who was given access to the internet. Nobody else in the department had access to the internet. And this was in the mid 90s. Well, maybe,
Really?
probably trying to think of the timing there, but maybe 93, 94. I'm not that great with dates, but in there.
Yeah.
And it was, so I was low enough down the chain, just to tell you, I wasn't a person with my own walk-in office and sofa and all of that desk. I was in one of those open cubicles, okay, so I was in the cubicle, but everybody in the department then would come and hang out at my cubicle, because it was like, oh, she's got the internet. And this might help me figure out the timing, but there was a thing, one of the early memes that was floating around at the time was Hillary Clinton's different hairstyles. So that was a meme that you would have. And I just remember, I have this visual of myself in the cubicle, and we were all looking at Hillary Clinton's hairstyle. So that might help me isolate the time. But then I went to a large agency on my path to train towards that career, that thing. And maybe it was because of the newness of it and all, but I ended up working for the head of a department before I specialized in writing. But he was the head of a new department called New Media. And I remember they built a lab to show the directors and the actors how they could incorporate this new media. And we had a T1 line put into the agency, which was the highest speed delivery that they had at the time, the T1, so that was a big deal. And so I was involved, kind of ground up for the beginning of programming fictional and entertaining media on the internet, or at least seeing that. I wasn't doing that, but I was watching the creatives come in and participate in those meetings. So it's interesting to me, and that would have been about, I think, 95, 96, that time frame. So it's just interesting that the US, still not everybody had it in their home then, for sure. But the bigger business, But I would think that by the time everybody got it into their homes, and it was just a common thing to check your emails and talk about what you saw online and everything, that was definitely 98, I'm guessing, at the latest. So we were a full, seems like 7 years or so ahead of Australia in terms of that.
Yeah, I mean, there was lots of people that had the internet at home, but I mean,
okay, let's do a bucket. Let's do a bucket bucket adjustment. Perfect. Okay. Yeah.
There was plenty of people that had the internet, and the internet was a widely sort of mainstream thing, but for each individual house to have it was definitely not happening. That was the thing. But I was in a town where there was a lot of uni students, so a lot of us were going to people's houses to use the internet, or staying back on campus to use the internet there. So to have it at home was still, I don't know, it was still kind of like a big deal.
Yeah.
Because this is probably, what, the iPhone came out in 97? Oh, 2007.
Uh-huh.
I think the first iPhone. So by the time that became, a fairly big deal, it's probably like a year or two into that before, you had Google in your pocket.
Right.
So But this is back in the day where the internet, but there still wasn't video streaming, that's for sure.
Right. Right.
Just like HTML and text, and it's very, very, like there was some audio and some sort of like music and stuff like this, but video was very hard. You had to have a very good connection to be able to stream a video with any type of clarity. So, yeah, but it was kind of funny because, I mean, from the earliest day, Alan was saying that the internet will be around for about 20 years before it becomes what it was always meant to be, or what it was created to be anyway. Once all the schmucks had stopped paying for its, paying for all the infrastructure through, as we do it. And he's just spot on. Like the internet right now is really starting to show its true color. It's going to be it's going to be a system where everything's online, everything's paid online, everything's recorded online. It's going to be just as boring and grey as like a communist concrete building. It's not going to be all like it's not going to be colourful and enjoyable and interactive and all the things that's being sold to us to be, for us to buy into. That's rapidly changing.
Yeah, I put up a talk of his last weekend from 2018, and he said right there, it's pretty much over, the internet. He said that the freedom that's gone, and so he was absolutely right. For me, this is over. I had a kind of an epiphany, which I don't want to derail the conversation with the epiphany that I just had, but I had an epiphany about what I'm doing. And I may talk about it more as the epiphany becomes, a whole thought out thing, but it has to do with what kind of time is left. Who am I trying to communicate with? What am I, in other words, the questions that I face are, how do I support myself? But the bigger question, my bigger question, since Alan left this plane, since he passed, is, okay, so now I'm doing something, and I must. I would prefer to stoke the fire and make tea, but I must now do something. And what am I trying to do? It's not, it has to be more than keep a roof over my head. But with the way that the internet is really gone, there's so little that you can do, and everything has to be monetized, and everybody has to like you and subscribe. And what my epiphany really boils down to this: I can't jump on that machine.
I agree.
For why? Why?
I mean, I still find it funny when I realize that YouTube is monetized. Missed that whole, when people started saying, "Can you like and subscribe?" I thought, why are they saying that? Everyone's saying, "Smash the like button." I'm like, what are they saying? And then I realized, oh my God, people are making money from YouTube. I thought, how did that start? So YouTube for me was just an information platform. It was just a place to find information. And then very rarely you could kind of use it as a communication tool, but it was kind of more like, I mean, I was just trying to find out this whole weather modification thing and how vast it was. That was my main focus for YouTube when I first started. Like the whole weather modification thing, it's the one big thing that blows my mind every single day. It's never stopped breaking my heart ever since I realized what hell is going on out the door every day. Like all the garbage that you get through the television and and the culture that you got to sort of wade through every day, all the language and behavior and fashion and all that. I can handle that. But every day when I wake up, look out the window, walk outside and just see what's going on, and that there isn't a soul anywhere near me that can see it.
Yes.
It's very isolating in terms of like, it's like someone smashing a cymbal around your head, but you can't speak about it because no one else can hear it. But it's deafening. And so I started to reach out through YouTube to other people around the world and put up videos and say, like, is this, like, are you guys, can you see this where you are? And people would put a video up and say, yes, this is what I'm saying. And so, like, I was putting up videos about weather modification as soon as I realized back in 2006 or 2007. It got to the point where I realized you either see it or you don't see it. And if you do see it, then there's only a handful of people that are ever going to see it with you.
Yes. You know, I said I was a couple of minutes late getting back, and I said that I had been out, and we set the time so that I'd be back, but I was out with my aunt from first thing this morning all day long on a series of things that she needed. So we went here, and then I drove her there, and, you know, we were all over the place, and I was watching the sky all day, and it was heartbreaking. And just coming back, there was a new pattern that I saw where the clouds had, you know, kind of gone into this grid line, but they'd softened up. So it was like a weird mushy. And then there was another, just saw the X being laid down. And then over there, there's another X lay. And I was just thinking, oh, it's just so awful. And my Aunt Betty said, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? The sky is just so blue. And I just said, yes, it is. It's a beautiful day, you know, and it was a beautiful day. We were having fun, you know, so what can you say? It's a beautiful day. But it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just, I'll never forget the day where we used to go to the pub on a Sunday afternoon. They just renovated. They just remodeled this pub that it was on the harbour. So you sit out on this beautiful hardwood deck, this massive hardwood deck, and just look over towards the city, watch the sun go down over the water. It's just spectacular. And we're all sitting there, and I'm watching the world get engineered, you know, and I'm sitting there just going, oh my God. And everyone's like, oh my God, look how amazing the sunset is, and look at all the colours in the sky. And it just blew my mind, you know, and that was what, 2008 by then, maybe 2009 by then. And it's never gotten any better in terms of being able to find people to communicate with, or like you can find people to talk about it with, but very rarely. And then a lot of the time I find people that can see the lines in the sky, but they can't see what it creates. They can't see the 3 or 4 day process that's involved. Like, they don't have the patience to sit there and go, okay, now there's lines now there's like a fog, okay, now there's a cloud, now there's a storm. That started 3 or 4 days ago, and here's the result that we're living through now. And so you get, oh, okay, I can see some lines in the sky, and then you get, oh, how good is it that we're getting some rain finally? Well, yeah, I know it is. Like, it's good to get the rain, but this is all artificial. And then as it flows away, you see like all the ripple marks in the sky from where they've sent a frequency through it and brought that weather through, and it just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. Then you start to realize that it basically never rains without that process. Like, I haven't seen rain once in a decade without the lines appearing, that eggshell coloured garbage in the sky, and then clouds being pulled up underneath it, and then spreading out, rain coming down, and then that fog being pushed off into the distance. At once. And to this day, like every single day where I am, it's just line after line after line. Whether that bleeds out into an opaque sky or not and blocks out all the blue is one thing, or you just get the lines all day and then eventually it'll, swing around the mountains and come back around the other side. It's just hard. It's very hard to be in this world where you can see and no one else around you can. Like, what do you do with that? You can only really internalize it and kind of deal with it. You can't.
Well, in that process of dealing with it, so you're just in terms of the mental, the emotional, the psychological, everything that's going on with you at the time that you have decided that you're not going to complete your last semester in university. You are not ever going to darken the door of a finance company again. You've thrown yourself into the conspiracy world and looking into geoengineering and you've discovered Alan Watt. You're listening to his work. What started happening to you psychologically, emotionally, because your process intensified? So what happened? How did it?
Oh boy, I went down a pretty dark rabbit hole. Straight away, you look to wake up people around you instantly. When you find something that's so intense, but it's actually harming those around you. So you know that this is affecting the people that you love and the people you care about. So I think it's a normal response to that, to actually grab people and say, you're standing on a train track and there's a train coming. Let's go. And they just don't. They just stand there staring at the train, embracing its eventual connection. They just stand there and stare at it.
Can I get a beer with that? This train, yeah. Can I have a beer with this train?
Yeah, absolutely. And so then you look down and realize, oh, they're tied to the track. Oh, okay. So you get down, you start undoing all the knots and cutting the rope and trying to pull them free. And they're like, then they start kicking you away. And that's when you start to realize, okay, this is bigger than me. I can't do anything with this, even though that whole process probably takes 10 years to finally realize that you can't shake anybody away. And you've got to handle that. You've got to be able to live with that somehow. But you can't stop the process within yourself. I couldn't anyway. I mean, mate, I've seen people that have woken up and gone back to sleep. That blew my mind. When I've seen people wake up and then they've chosen to go back to sleep.
Yes, and because it is a choice there. To me, that's the character in the Matrix who's the traitor, who sells out because he knows but hey, he wants the wine and the steak even though he knows it isn't real, and that is a choice. I've seen people make that's like.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And it might not be wine and steak. It might be any other, say, supporting mechanism. Like I find religion to be the steak and the glass of wine too. It just depends where. Like I've got this vision where it's like you're on a boat sailing through whatever type of water, and along the way you go past a jetty or a wharf, whatever you want to call it. Like you go past a place to get off the boat. And as you go along, surely one by one, someone gets off at each jetty as you go along, and it's like, how far can you ride this awakening before you're just the last one floating through the path that you're on alone, and eventually you just end up alone. There's just
I
But
have
the
a
path
really
is,
similar image to that, Ryan. My image is jumping off a cliff, and you know how you have a sheer wall of a cliff, and then there might be an outcropping of different branches, you know, and so you go down, and maybe several of you jumped off the cliff at the same time, and you see as you're falling, somebody grabs a hold of a branch, and then somebody grabs a hold of another branch. And my reaction is, hey, let's sprout wings, you know, let's get some wings going here. Because
yeah,
because there is no end to it. There's actually no end to the process. There is, you know, the boat that you're on in the ocean that keeps going past the jetties, and you see people say, I'm going to land here, or I'm going to get on back on land there. You're going to, if you've committed to this, you're on your boat forever, and you're the captain of your own ship, and you're all by your lonesome. And you
absolutely.
know, in my vision, I'm just I'm flying like Mel
Yeah,
Gibson on LSD and conspiracy theory.
yeah, to be clear, like it's not just in one mode either.
No.
Like if we weren't living in such a domesticated environment, this would be a natural process in the physical, real, face to face with reality world.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like if there's a bad season and the trees aren't producing fruit and the animals aren't eating the grass, then you're just straight out of luck. Like that's it. You've got to move with that environment to survive. And you've
Yeah.
got to be healthy enough, fit enough, strong enough in all ways, like emotionally, physically, spiritually, psychologically. You've got to have people to support you in that. You've got to support others in that. You've got to be completely accountable in that moment, in that season, in that year.
Yes.
You've got to be so connected to be able to pick up on all those little nuances that tell you, okay, this is time to leave. It's time to
Mm-hmm.
move. It's time to stay. It's time to read those signs, you know. And so on this path, like being physically strong is such a massive thing that we just hand it over to the doctor. Oh, we'll be right. When
Mm-hmm.
there's a problem, I'll get a pill or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, and I'll be right, no problem. So I can just become lazy with that. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the same with psychology and your mental state. It's the same with your spiritual state. It's all these things that we just like go, oh, I'll give that to that person or that system to monitor for me. And they'll tell me when I'm out of line and I'll just do what they say rather
Mm-hmm.
than having the strength within yourself to say, okay, I'm looking after this for me because no one else will. And if someone else typically has an ability to look after that for you, it usually comes with a price tag,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's money or your time or some part of your soul you got to give up. You know, there's always a price. And as I've gone along, I've realized there's no way to pay that price without giving up part of yourself and then having to just bow down and live on your knees. And I just refuse to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather die alone with my own integrity than sort of pretend that I'm actually living my own life, but really I'm just on my knees. Like I just won't do it. You know, and there's a lot of reasons why I'm like that. And Australia is a pretty brutal place down here when you really get into it because we're so far gone down here.
Really.
You know, like growing up, seeing the American culture become, I guess, the one world culture. Because I mean, how can you not see that when everyone's wearing the same clothes, whether it's Russia, Germany, Australia, England?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can go to the most remote place in the world and they're wearing the same clothes as you'd find anyone else wearing in any other country.
Mm-hmm.
There's no unique, you know, creativity. There's no art. There's no art in culture anymore. So whereas down here in Australia, I mean, we're so far socialist now that it's become mainstream, it's become embraced, and now people are fighting to protect it. You know, another classic quote from The Matrix, you know, where you're living in a world where people will fight against you to prop up the system that's controlling them.
Absolutely.
And it, like, I can't believe that that was filmed in Australia. It's just, I don't think that's a coincidence that they filmed The Matrix in Australia. Like, anyway.
You know, I had an encounter last week. At some point, I may have to share more about it, but the broad strokes of the encounter were that, for a reason, because I'll set it up by saying I'm preaching to the choir. I know that there are new people that come in that have discovered either me or Alan's work, or you know, somehow they're new. And I also know that I talk to young people, you know, 20-year-old fellow and a 21-year-old fellow and a 24-year-old, you know, and a young woman, and you know, so they're young people, and that's encouraging. But for the most part, I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
But I had an encounter with some people last week, and they were aware of Alan, and I didn't realize initially that it was not hospitable. See, my attitude is, well, of course you love him, right? I mean, everybody loves Alan. I mean, you'd be mad to listen to this man talk and not just go, oh, wow, that's amazing. But they didn't, you know, to them, he was uber conspiracy theorist, and that was not a good thing. That was destructive and harmful. And when I realized, I mean, I just try to keep, you know, that story that Alan told a few times of the man who goes up the hill to meet the master, and the master says, well, just try to get along with everyone, and then the guy comes, no, it's the river, you know. He goes, you're right, son, it's the river. It's the river. So that was my approach, was you know, well, it's interesting, okay, you know, all right. But what I realized was, it is exactly that. In this little bubble that I'm in, where most of the people that I talk to are family that don't really care what I'm doing, as long as, you know, I'm supportive of them, and I make a meal every once in a while, and it's very congenial and a good, loving feeling. Or else it's people that I can communicate with about what I'm really thinking, or what I observe, and what I see. But to be having a conversation with someone who is in, I don't even know if I'm using this term correctly or not, but active denial. It's like, you know, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like what you're saying. I think it's harmful because they were, and everything the government tells me is good, and I believe it. And why would I think otherwise? And for you to suggest that I should think otherwise is, it's harmful. It's very dangerous. It's a threat to me and to other people. And that was an eye-opening kind of encounter, because you realize, when you go out amidst people like that, or you encounter someone who knows what you're doing and they don't like it at all, you realize most people really do want to be tied to the train tracks. They want it there. They do not understand the position that they're in. They have no concept of what this means to them, that they are going to be run over, because, you know, their whole consciousness, their whole dialogue that they have with reality is, everybody's tied to the tracks.
Yeah. Well, it's very, I mean, the rail, I like using that analogy, because you're on a prescribed path. You've bought into the agenda. You're on that straight road. There's no tight corners. There's no need to be, you know, vigilant and aware and alert and alive. You can just be just rolled along the track. Like you can just be on the track. Now you can actually be tied to the track and run over it, and then call it an unforeseeable event and a tragedy, or you can be on the train in the whatever class and just roll along, and you get the view that comes to you through the window. You're not actually out living it. You're just in the carriage getting carried. The second that responsibility is handed back to somebody on every level, then it's so frightening. And I love that analogy of waking up. Like waking up means you're going to open your eyes. And now if you wake up and it's dark, okay, it's not so shocking. But if you wake up to like the sun blaring in your eyes, it's going to be painful. The first thing you're going to want to do is close your eyes again. So waking up would then have to be a slow process, which is when we wake up in the morning, it's always a slow process. Like you don't just bounce out of bed. It's usually a process of, half an hour or so of getting your day started in whatever way that is. And then when you're waking up to just how far gone we are, like that was one thing that really started to, like it was like a shaking started where I started to feel, okay, something's not right. There's this agenda that we're involved in, or that has involved us in it. Like you're born into the system and you start to wake up to it. But it's that realization that it's just all encompassing. It's a complete system. There's no thing that has not been brought into that agenda. And so it's just like that realization that, oh my God, this thing is way bigger than I thought it was, until eventually you start to see the whole thing. And it just, I don't know how to handle that. Like I don't know how to manage that. So I don't know how anyone else would manage that either. But we do have, somehow you can find that strength to keep waking up, keep that process going, and keep it even empowering you to the point where it's like, okay, well, I want to try to get as close to this natural experience, whatever that is, like I just don't want to leave this realm without having connected to it in a really authentic, genuine way. I don't have left here thinking that I succeeded because I had a bank account that was envious, or I had a material thing that people around me gave me that title of success. I want to be able to feel that on some level, and I don't have any material objects that give me that sense of success.
You're not just mad about those snowshoes. It's like, I've made it.
I've got a 7 or 8 year old phone.
The analogy that you're making of the tracks and the trains, is good, because like it's almost a pyramid, but it's just a different way of visualizing it, because the wasteland, the bottom of the pyramid, that's us, that, and then the top we can't even see the top because it's in the clouds and everything, but it's this whole structure that keeps it going. But in a way, it's the train works beautifully, because all of those who are not awake to it would be the wasteland, and they will get run over as the agenda just plows right through them and past them.
Yeah.
But on that train, what you've got, and this is such a big part of socialism, I think, and the con of the money system. This is huge. I mean, this is a big thing that I've thought about in a way, even before I encountered Alan, this whole idea that God was Santa Claus, just, and if you, it's a very, very Calvinist kind of idea too. If you have been particularly good, then God has rewarded your efforts and your works. But what the money does, it allows you, are you in the train? Are you in the cabin where everybody has to sit up day and night, but at least it's warm, right? Or are you in the cabin where you've got a sleeping compartment and some kind of privacy? You might have to share your compartment with some strangers, but it's still fairly, it's spacious and comfortable. That's money that bought you that. Or are you in that compartment where, the man in the white jacket and the gloves comes by with a cart and he's got a silver tea service, and you get sandwiches at tea time, and you get a breakfast, and you get your steak and wine because you're in that compartment, and money is what has bought you that compartment. And it allows you to prop up what is actually a non-reality. You may go through your whole life, you may live and die in this unreal state, this unnatural state, but that is what it is, and money has supported that. You never put your hands in the ground, you never chopped anything or dug anything or faced an element or said, okay, here's a huge problem, what am I going to do about it?
Yep.
What do I do?
Yeah, you've never actually used anything of your true self. You've only ever used the tools that were handed to you, which really aren't, that magnificent. They're kind of all blunt and horrible. They're just shiny. They don't have any real effect. Like a good sharp knife is you can't buy a good sharp knife. You've got to maintain that. You got to learn how to use that. You got to be able to handle it without cutting your fingers off. You got to know how to sharpen it. You got to, it'd be best if you actually forged it yourself, because then you'd know what type of steel it was too. So you wouldn't try to sharpen something that wasn't able to give you a good edge or hold a good edge. You know what I mean? Like the thing I find fascinating about the train analogy, it could be a train, a plane, or a bus, anything that has a class system attached to it, is that the poorest class that's furthest from the richest class both have a very similar relationship to money, which is the poorest and the richest don't have any of it.
Exactly.
If you haven't got any money, you're the poorest. If you don't actually use money anymore because you got so much of it that it's irrelevant, then you're the richest. Now, the people in the lowest of the class system have the most interesting stories. The people with the most money, they don't really do anything with it.
Right.
They become a cardboard cutout of having they're so domesticated that they're beyond it all. They're beyond life. They've bought themselves completely out of life. So they become so desensitized to the whole world because everything's manageable just by this stuff. You just like confetti, it just solves all that stuff. It's all done. But it just, to me, looks numb. Even though I would, like all of us on the bottom here, we all would like more money to solve some of those stresses, but it's not really solving anything really.
Right.
Like, we're never going to be able to buy our way out of here. Like, I just found out yesterday, which blew my mind, but where I grew up in Sydney, the average house price now is 1.6 million.
Wow.
The average.
Wow.
1.6 million. And then all the, the financial figures around that was taking 17 years to save a deposit. Now, in 17, system continues the way it is in 17 years, you won't have the deposit anyway because it will be a $10 million house.
Right.
And these are the places I grew up in that were going for, say, like 17 years ago, let's say roughly 20, which is 2005. A house was maybe like 700,000. So that's gone up by $1 million in 20 years. So as that compounds, in another 20 years, when you got that deposit, it's not just going to go up by another $1 million, it's going to go up by another $5 million. and so it's a completely unrealistic situation where money won't solve that problem. It's too far gone to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
You can't save enough money to solve that problem. If you can, you have to borrow so much money that money is going to create more problems than it will solve anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So the system's not going to be there in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the system's going to be there in 20 years with the way, the cryptocurrency market's coming into play, the way this online personality we're all creating is going to start taking over our real world personality. All these systems are now coming into view so strongly that you can see people are just giving in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas playing football on the street, like, it didn't matter what street it was. We used to stop traffic and play cricket and football and handball and skate and ride bikes and all this, climbing trees, and like, it didn't matter if the car was there. We just stopped them. These days, if you see kids playing outside, I mean, I can't remember seeing kids play outside, and I live in a little country town.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone seeing kids, running around just being kids. Like, you just don't see it.
And it's very sad. I was talking to I was accused in a group setting of people that I was doing a chat with them at their invitation. And I was accused by someone of black pilling. And I don't really keep up, but I mean, obviously I know, okay, black pill is, doom and gloom, et cetera, et cetera. So in other words, I'm there and I'm not offering solutions. And they were really into decentralized, the kind of anarchy, that the anarchist utopia that there's so much of out there, which is kind of a libertarian offshoot. But anyway, they're going to make their own economy. They're going to have individual little economies. And if you think about it, they're playing, I mean, that attitude right there plays right into the hands of, you'll hear people like even Elon Musk talk about the need to decentralize, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not, whatever you want to do, knock yourself out. But it seems to me that any kind of crypto system that you set up for yourself, a blockchain technology that somebody else came up with, I said it all goes back to the World Economic Forum. The whole blockchain idea was pushed heavily by them, as far as I can tell, for many, many years.
Yep.
No, we can do it. We can have, and you can have, barter's not practical because, you can't, if you're a carpenter and you need beef and the butcher doesn't need any carpentry work, what are you going to do? Well, I mean, I don't know. So if you say that may not be a long-term solution to this, because again, you're dealing with the rubber shovel, as Alan would say. You're dealing with a tool that has basically been given to you. I said, well, I don't necessarily think that of myself as black pilling or pessimistic. I just think it really does come down to an individual. I mean, just to say, for example, that we're in a group of maybe 20 people talking, and there aren't 2 people in that group that have the same mindset or the same idea about what we should be doing or what we could be doing and so forth. How do you extrapolate from that? Or the marriages that don't last because the man and the woman don't see eye to eye and cannot cooperate. Where do you get these cooperative little anarchist communities that have been so, again, heavily promoted for the last 5 years? It just kind of came with Operation C. Oh, well, don't worry, because you can set up your own community and you can, build your own blockchain cryptocurrency.
Yeah, that's definitely just a sales pitch to bring more and more people in, like any pyramid scheme. Like you have to dangle the carrot to get them to sort of pursue it. And I mean, it's a damn good carrot. Like, there's a lot of money to be made in that industry or that part of the economy at the moment. I mean, But that's no different than, you know, redefining a home to a house and then a housing market.
Right.
Like, why don't families work anymore? Well, they live inside a economic unit. They don't live in a home.
Right.
In a house that's profitable. They bought the house to be profitable. They didn't buy the house to have a experience of family and bringing up children and being the head of a family. And, you know, they didn't buy the house for personal growth. They bought the house for financial growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone's happy and successful when the house price goes up. What happens when it goes down? Well, in Australia, where the entire world around us is a housing market, houses can't go down. They just cannot go down. But in reality, we're watching them go down. Like the house up the road went on the market for $960,000. Now it's on the market for $790,000. So that's say $150,000, $60,000, $70,000 it's gone down. With the sale sign still there. No one's looking at it. No one wants to buy it. And so what do you do? What do you do with your house when it's losing money and there's no way to even pay off the loan that you're left with once you sell it? What happens to society? What happens to yourself in that? What happens to the human being living a life within a system like that? I mean, if you buy into it, I don't really know how to quantify that. Like, if you've bought into that, then you get what you deserve. You've bought into it. So if you buy, 10 shares of a company and they go up, great. If they go down, well, that's on you. It's as simple as that. You've bought into it. You've for that, gambled for that. So if it pays off, that's great. If it doesn't, well, that's the responsibility that you get. I mean, even winning's a responsibility. What are you going to do with it? Like, are you going to watch that stock go up, cash in, use that money for something productive, or are you going to watch it go all the way back down to nothing and disappear? Or like the responsibility is is at both ends, I guess. But it's very interesting to see the way it's affecting the people that live here. Like, watching people go into that euphoria of like, oh my God, I'm buying a house that's now $300,000 more it has gone up $300,000 in just price alone in just 1 year. And watching, 25-year-olds walking around with their credit card in their mouth because it shows wealth, because they're using their house as an ATM machine. So they just
this is a new one.
are just like, what's going on? Like, and then you realize, okay, people are just like, they're spending their equity
right
as type of affluence, but it's not it's not real. It's just a price tag going up.
Right.
The utility in the house hasn't gone up. It's the exact same thing it was when you bought it.
Yeah.
But then to go and spend that on, just commercial stuff and to show off about it, that's great. But when that stops, that lifestyle stops so quickly that everyone's recoiling now. Like, so many shops are closing down, and big ones are closing, just all the little ones as well. And being a carpenter, I mean, the amount of new houses getting built is very minimal. The amount of projects that we look at that people are willing to start is still, there's still a lot of like things to quote, jobs to quote, but then when they get the price of what it's going to cost to finish that project, it's all dependent on whether the bank will give them the loan to
Mm-hmm.
spend $100 on the house. And
Mm-hmm.
when they start going, oh, okay, well, I'll just quickly go to the bank and grab that. And the bank says, no, 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 you can't get it anything near that.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to become very obvious that, okay, I'm not that person anymore. I can't just spend that money like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're stuck with a house, you're stuck with a loan, you're stuck with, I would have loved to have bought a house when I was younger, but I'm so glad I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It'd be nice to have a home to say that was yours, but it's nothing
It
like it was.
isn't. It
It's
isn't.
not.
I mean, I'm sitting in the perfect example of the con, because this is my parents' home that they
Yeah,
built together 50 years ago, and it has been paid for a
yeah,
long time. But to insure it and pay the taxes on it is now, for us, this is anybody else's mortgage payment. You see what I'm saying? It,
absolutely. Yeah,
it's a total con, a total con.
that's one thing that I remember when Alan said that years ago, when he said, "Read the contract,
Yeah,
read the mortgage contract." I'm
yeah,
like, "Oh, okay." Well, went and got a mortgage contract, and there it is. It says it right there. You're a tenant.
yeah,
It just blew my mind.
yeah,
And here I'm doing a finance degree.
yeah,
I'm looking at these guys. It says tenant. Now, oh my God. Then I
yeah.
started to, like, okay, what's the process of a loan? What's all this stuff? Where does the money come from? And it just honestly, like when you
Yeah.
start,
I mean, the super wealthy with their trusts and the way that they deal with things, okay, that's one thing. But real estate used to mean real estate. But that
absolutely,
contract that says tenant, and the other thing too that Alan would say is, mortgage from the French, the gauge of death, the gauge of mort, your mortality. So, but they've got it worked out. So, okay, yeah, my parents did it. They paid it, and they paid it off before they died, but I don't know how long, but they did. So that was the
yeah.
gauge of death. But it's, hey, there it is, tenant. Well, we can stick it to the next generation, and we're going to. So,
We can charge you rent because you're the tenant. Now we can call that
mhm.
capital tax, but it's still a payment.
Oh, it's not even that. No, this is just property taxes. People would think that was, yeah, the inheritance. No, no, that's just your annual property tax.
Yeah, like
It's crazy.
yeah, the mortgage is paid for, but not the land tax,
Hmm.
not that. Like if you say break that down, I mean, the capital gains tax over here is just ridiculous. People are paying so much money in something they already own because someone said it changed in value.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, did it change in, like, it didn't change in utility?
No.
Nothing's really changed, but you're still the one footing the bill. And how they ever say like a house is an asset, that blows my mind too.
Yeah.
It is so obviously not an asset. It's a liability at best.
Yeah.
Like the amount of maintenance that goes into a house. And I rent this house, and I still put a lot of time and effort into maintaining it.
Yeah. You're a
When something,
good tenant.
I'm lucky actually. It's a great little house. It's a really old. It's essentially a cabin that's just been extended out over the years. So
Well,
every room.
the framework around that door, that's very craftsman style. The Frank Lloyd Wright period. That framework there has got a
Yeah,
night like a 1930s feel to it.
yeah, it's probably that old, this house actually.
Yeah.
Uh, but that was the deal by living here. It was like, look, if you look after the place, you can stay there.
Well,
So
that's a pretty sweet deal.
yeah, I've been.
Is that a fireplace there that I can't really make out the top of it?
Yeah, there's an open fire there, so we're still
That's
fire.
nice. Nice mantle.
Yeah, I love it. Like in winter with the open fire, it's like the houses we grew up in all had open fires. And so these days it's air conditioning and split systems and all this
yeah.
press,
Yeah.
and it's, so those little things, like, that's why I love being out here in the country, because it's, especially in Australia, there's still spots that it just feels like it used to. It's still there, that feeling of, I don't know about freedom, but I mean, of, I don't know what you'd call it. Like, it's not so artificial. It's closer to nature, closer to reality. Yeah, you drive to get your own firewood by putting in the effort to cut firewood and, have fire. It's not just click a button and pay a power bill. It's a lot closer to reality if you put the effort in.
That's nice.
So
let me ask you a question. You paid a price for the path that you chose and the pursuit of truth and knowledge, and you went through some kind of dark places. How did you, what was involved in the process of pulling yourself out of the darkest places and being in a path that was more accepting of what you had learned and how it affected you and those around you?
God damn, that's a big question.
Sorry.
Well, I'll try to answer it. That's something I'd answer over many, many hours. But
oh, okay. All right. Okay.
It's just like, I grew up in a really horrible family situation where everything was constantly getting broken apart. The amount of marriages and different mothers and different fathers and different brothers and sisters everywhere, and it was just horrible. And so I was kind of forced to, grow up really young, become an adult very young anyway, and that never works out very well. So when I started to wake up to the world, I was already trying my best to change that direction by going to uni, by trying to, find a different way, make more money, whatever you want to call it. Like, I was really, really trying to change path. But once I started waking up and seeing just how far gone things were, that shifts into kind of like, you try to save yourself from it and you try to save others from it. They don't want to hear it. Yet it's like you get to the point where they don't want to hear it, but you feel like they have to. And so then that just pushes them away. That creates division. Then you start having to learn so much about yourself to be able to handle that, because now not only are you alone, you're suffering from loneliness, you're reaching out into a world that doesn't want to hear it. So you're going to have to really grow up for real. You can't, there's no crutch there that can support that, and I mean, I tried everything. I tried everything to prop myself up, and there's just nothing out there, and it's still painful to this day. Like, it's not something that you ever, well, I don't know, I've never really found a way to really be strong in that awakening. It's just always, there's just always something that's testing you all the time. And
Alan would say this is why you don't try to wake someone up.
Absolutely.
You share what you know if you hear them asking the right questions, and the right questions are always deeper, and it's just very different than, oh, why is the economy crashing, or why are they making us? The right questions are deeper. They're not reactive. They are, they indicate that someone's been thinking about things for a while. And because what you're talking about is a process, and it's a process of a lifetime. And sometimes you're flying, right? And sometimes you're in a boat by yourself, and it's very, very lonely, and you feel isolated, and you're not okay. It's just not okay. And there's grief. And I think,
yeah.
yeah. So you don't do that to somebody else as much as the inclination is you've got to know. I have to tell you, and it's for your own good, and you just it's the ultimate unkind thing to do, because if somebody if you put that knowledge in somebody's head before they're ready to hear it, you can really harm them very much.
And it can also come back to haunt you too, in the way that I've seen quite a lot where I've had conversations with people and they're agreeing. Just that idea where like when you can actually see somebody waking up from what you've been, talking about with them,
mm-hmm.
and they take it on board until the point where it's either it's causing a disturbance in their life, so then they turn around and blame you for all the pain and suffering they're going through.
Right.
And it's all your fault for making them feel or see something that they didn't want to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So waking people up, it's an impossibility. I just don't think it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting, because just the other day, I think it was yesterday, no, the day before yesterday, I was talking to a neighbour who's actually quite aware of what's going on and likes to have a bit of a chat about it. And they were saying that they were talking to a friend about what it would be like if all of a sudden, something failed, like the economy or something. And they said, yeah, there'd be riots in the street and there'd be no food and there'd be all this stuff. And I'm like, I said, just wait a second. Like, what do you mean you had a discussion with someone about what would happen if, say, there was a societal breakdown? What do you mean you were discussing about the possibilities of what that would look like? It only just stopped 18 months ago, 2 years ago. It only just stopped 2 years ago,
mm-hmm.
and it had been going for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they didn't go and riot in the street and run out of food. They went and bought toilet paper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they made you do all this stuff
Mm-hmm.
based on see, touch, or taste, or feel.
And pornography consumption went through the roof.
It's we're talking about what would it look like standing here now if society broke down.
Yeah.
Only 2 years after we lived through it for 2 years. I just couldn't. I'm like, just take a breath. We just did live through it.
Yeah.
How come you don't remember it?
Yeah.
What the hell is going on where you can't remember that we just went through
mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just in this country, the whole world went through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find it fascinating that people can't remember, because at the moment, we're living in this country like it never happened.
Yes.
People just pretend like it never happened. But I'd also find it funny that there was never a celebration of the end of whatever you want to call it, like the end of the lockdowns. There was never an end point. There's never been like, the war's over, let's all celebrate.
Right.
There's never been the announcement.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of dissolved.
Mm-hmm.
So there's never been like, okay, well, how did all this happen and who do we point the finger at? It just kind of dissolved away. And I think that's why no one's really acknowledging that they went through it, because there was a kind of starting point and then it kind of just faded away.
if people weren't totally domesticated,
Yeah.
totally socialized, so many people, I know, I read a lot, and I even heard anecdotally people, that they bought a TV, they got stimulus money, they got a new television, or whatever. If they weren't in that completely domesticated place, nobody would need to tell them. They would understand when they were in it that they were under attack, that everything that they loved and cherished, their freedoms, their mobility, all of that was under attack. And they would know when it backed off. And they would also be able to stand back and look and say, now, what happened during that time? We heard about AI over and over and over and over again. And we heard about the coming robotics, and we had all of these, and we're going into, because this was in the mainstream, you're going to have new technology, and you've got Elon Musk saying, well, at some point we're going to have a universal basic income. And now we have come out of it, and people don't go to stores as much as they used to. In other words, it changed people's habits. They buy things more online.
And all those people that you were just talking about, and now the people coming back into power to bring those concepts into reality.
Yes.
Like Trump comes in, and I don't care what the names of these people are.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in and says, I'm going to save you from a guy who's he's not creating battery cars and flying to Mars. He's creating a brain chip. That's his main focus, is the brain chip and putting the internet within you.
And even that, though, I think is more like a piece of PR, because I think it's already done, and it's much smaller and more sophisticated, and it's just like, but he's doing the PR for this really clunky thing, and
drill into your head and put a wire in.
Okay. Exactly, but it's PR, it's good.
Yeah. But now he's coming in as the savior.
Yeah.
Underneath the guy.
Yes.
That created.
Yeah, I know. It's
like, what is that? Like a in the road, or what do you like? But like, I just find it fascinating that you've got this like heavily internet centric power structure.
Absolutely. Well, Peter Thiel is huge, and Palantir Technology. I mean, Peter Thiel has backed and promoted Ramaswamy, who is Musk's partner in the DOGE, which is Department of Government Efficiency. Ridiculous. And Peter Thiel, PayPal guy, has also backed Vance, who is the running mate. He's the future vice president, and that's Thiel backing. And Thiel is the co-founder of Palantir Technologies, and Palantir is the panopticon technology that is already in use. And I mean, it's so farcical. And then I hear people say, oh, don't black pill, this is a populist government. I'm sorry. The people have spoken. Okay, I see.
But it's like they're coming in to legitimize what's already been authorized and built around us that we're all living in anyway.
Exactly.
And so if you want to open your eyes and look, everything they're talking about is already here. It's just being called something else.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being called a digital prison, it's being called freedom and communication and broadening horizons and opening up the world, and like you can communicate anytime, anywhere. All this, like, now they're bringing in the real system. Now they're going to start.
And blockchain is not a block and a chain like a slave. No, blockchain is transparency and traceability of the transaction so that you can trust the transaction. I mean, it's yeah. Yes.
Right. Yeah. We're going to turn into a block because we don't trust. I mean, did you say?
Yeah.
It's fascinating to watch. It's never, ever different.
No.
Okay, you can have a chain to your leg down to the railway track. You can have that physical, hardened steel chain. You can have that. But you can also have it virtually. You can have it like psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
Like Stockholm syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Real thing where you're free to leave at any time. But you won't.
No.
So why build all that when you can just convince them that it's there when it's not? You can have the artificial world do the same thing as the real world, as long as you can just bring it in slowly, like use those Fabian techniques to get everyone to cook themselves.
Yeah.
And then tell it to them as something that it's not, so they'll never see it.
It's not prison, it's Hotel California.
Perfect. It's perfect. And so then you have to deal with that on your own again. Now you're back to being by yourself again. Like we can sit and laugh and maybe even sort of point the finger at how ridiculous it all is, but it's not ridiculous. It's actually happening all around us.
And it's actually not funny. I mean, you have to laugh. You got to have the gallows humor. You do.
That's right. You got to.
But it isn't funny. And one of the things that I said in terms of the black pill label is, I think this is a lyric to a song, and I won't get it right, but basically none of us are free as long as one of us is enslaved. And this isn't, I mean, you've got to understand that it's a battlefield, and Alan was really reminding me of this all the time, the casualties, and you got to, stay on task. You don't go back to get the casualty. They all have the opportunity. Everybody has a chance. This is just, they've chosen not to hear, and they've chosen not to know. But you keep going. I keep going because there are young people, there are minds that are going to be open. And as long as there is one out there that's waiting in a way just to be tapped, right? Just that's all they need is the tap. And they're going to do it all by themselves. I don't have to put the words into their head because it was there all along. They knew it. It was completely self-contained, and all they're going to do is exactly what you did. I'm going to wake up now.
Yeah, that's right.
And as long as that's out there, you can create.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, we're doing that.
Yeah, yeah, but go ahead. You go.
Well, I find it very interesting when we live in a world where, in the domesticated world, everything's a pyramid. Everything. That, like, everything is designed on a pyramid level, where the bottom is the workforce and the top is, the mind or the ideas or whatever, and they're the ones that will essentially, bleed the bottom and pull everything to the top and start again somewhere else. But yet in the real world, in the natural world, personal growth can be seen as like climbing a mountain. Where you put the effort in to climb up that mountain, the gift you're given is a broader view of the landscape you're in. So therefore the gaining of knowledge is like, as you put the effort in to climb up the mountain. That again.
Yeah.
So when I see people, like, if people ask me a question about something, it's because they've put that effort in to to get to that where they recognize that you might have an answer for them. Now, if that answer takes them back down the mountain where they have to sort of really fight to own that themselves, so be it. I've never really seen anybody, including myself, actually grab hold of a piece of information, really learn about it, and bring it, and then go through that process of it being knowledge and wisdom without having to go and get right into the dirt and the mud, and sort of really fight to have it as something that is now yours, that you have, that you know. So when you find that guru on the mountain, and you tap them on the shoulder and say, "Oh, give me all this knowledge and all this wisdom," well, the words you get is one thing. It's very rare that someone can just grab those words and sit with the master and just be there on that mountain with that view and handle it, because everything you came from is down the bottom of the mountain. So you're going to have to go back down there and sort that out before you can let it all go. It's very rare someone just can have that ability to let go. So getting tapped on the shoulder, it's like, you've also got to remember that the person that taps you on the shoulder, it's like, can you see that they can handle that process?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you don't, if I'm tapping somebody on the shoulder, I think it's even figuratively, because I never initiate conversations with people ever. I don't, if the tap is more metaphorical. If they hear it, it's a tap. You know what I'm saying? If I'm talking and they hear, then they've gotten that tap, and what they do with it is, it's up to them.
That's
and
right.
if they do that heavy digging and facing themselves and seeing, I think a big part of it is to see your own complicity. What parts of the lies have you bought? What choices have you made?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a big part of it.
Yeah. And so you got that sort of mountain view of, you have to do the work to get up that mountain. You got to handle carrying load up the mountain. You got to handle letting go of that load as you go up the mountain to go further with it. Then you got to handle the view of what you see when you turn around. And we all get sold on the postcard view of what it looks like from up on a mountain. But what if you're above a city and you can see now how this is happening and how this works, and what's like the horrors that are in that area, that domesticated environment that people live in, that say that it's paradise, but there's just a river of sewage running underneath that city, and everyone living that thinks it's brilliant. And it's the example of how to live an amazing life. But from that view, to look down there and handle that view, that's a big responsibility. And then you go into the artificial system of the pyramid, and it's the opposite. The higher up you get, the more horrible it is, but it's shinier and beautiful and amazing. Everyone's aspiring to get there. And the path to get there really doesn't cost you much. Not like it does in the natural world, because you can.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I actually think that the cost is the highest. I think you pay the ultimate price for that. I think that's the price of your soul.
If you're aware of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, to get to the very top of it, I think you have to be aware of it. You know what I mean? I mean, you can get on the sleeper compartment of the train just by making some compromises and stepping on a few people here and there and knocking it, but I think in that system where you're at the top, exactly what you're doing and how people are suffering down below, and you've made a bargain there, I think.
Yeah, those people that are in the capstone, absolutely. Like, they're disconnected from the pyramid.
Yes. Well, you're right. Yeah, they're soullessly floating above it all.
They have could they contain? How could they contain that if they were looking down with any type of connection? You couldn't do it.
No.
Like I was more kind of saying, like on my path as I walked up the artificial mountain, I got to a certain point, I just couldn't do it. There's just no way. I was not going to end up being an elite or wealthy or any of these things. Because the further I went from the base of the pyramid, the worse it got. To the point where I just couldn't take it. It was horrible.
The hollowness, is that what you're talking about? Like a bad hollow feeling?
Yeah, like, I mean, the behavior of the people as you go up doesn't get any better. Like if you find a guru on the side of a mountain, yeah, absolutely. But when you find someone, you know, that's very wealthy, just because they're super wealthy doesn't mean their behavior's any better. Doesn't mean they look after themselves any better. Doesn't mean they eat any better. Like, well, I saw more drug abuse and alcoholism the further up up the mountain I went, up the pyramid I went, to the point where it was just unmanageable. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
And so then I had to climb back down again and find a different way. And then you realize that basically everything's back in that balance situation where it's a 0-point game at the end anyway.
Yeah.
So
you see that up the pyramid thing a lot. I saw that in Hollywood because there's so many people that are making. I'm not talking about the super rich or the super famous or anything, but there are a lot of people that are making a lot of money. Why? Right? Why? And then you look at somebody who's made, you know, they're making 20 million a picture. And you have to know, one has to know, you're not worth that.
Oh,
I mean, it's like, or it could be anything. It could be the head of a corporation, whatever. The drugs, or the whatever the lifestyle is that kind of takes the edge off. That's going to go with it. It's not just because it's there, you know. Why do you do that? Why do you snort that? Why do you, because it's not because it's there. It's because you're empty.
You're empty, absolutely.
Because you've lied to yourself. You're not worth all that, right? You know, that everybody should go, oh yeah, you're amazing. Whether you're the head of a corporation or so, yeah, that's what you see. They want to believe their own PR.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they might not even ever get to the point where they have to analyze that.
No.
You know, if that noise around them never dies down, then they'd never think that it was something to see beyond. And then every now and then you do see someone that kind of wakes up in that world, and I don't know. I've seen a few people in that world wake up, and not one of them said anything good about it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's like, I mean, you could say the same thing about carpentry. I've worked myself to the bone for 25 years and I've got almost nothing to show for it. There's like the financial game is a 0-point game like everything else.
Right.
You can build it up and shield yourself from, from say being poor. Like we're all scared to death of being poor.
Mm-hmm.
So you build up this nest egg of like, you get your acorns in a big pile. It's all there just to go to zero anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But if you build yourself up from the inside out, not from the outside in, that's where you start to connect with, okay, there's something here that's worth this.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something here that's worth this effort. There's something here, like being here, it is a worthwhile thing to be here. And I think that's that's probably one of the biggest things I've ever come to realize is that there is a value of being here, of going through all this.
Absolutely. Because, one of the things that Alan said to me on the phone before he met me, and I've heard him say it on the radio, on the show, just to listeners, but he said this to me, and I was so profoundly moved by this. He said, "You matter."
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, my God, maybe I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're all in our own way part of this inhuman machine clawing for something, just to pay the bills, or I'm doing the cool thing, right? Or whatever it is, but that it doesn't matter, that it's like deep, deep, deep down inside. That's what I call like a hollow place, or the empty place.
Yep.
That you're lying to yourself.
Yep.
About what's really going on. And when he said that, I just thought, what if he's right? What if I do matter? What if I made bad choices, and I could make different choices, and those choices would have a different impact on me and other people? What if I matter? Wow.
Yeah. What do you do with that when you realize you actually do matter?
Yeah. And that's an important thing. It's like, there's something so dehumanizing about this unnatural slave system that we're born into, and wherever you find yourself in the pecking order, it's dehumanizing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Isn't it funny, like how every time the agenda attempts to step forward again, or like take another step forward, there's always a dehumanizing part to it.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, guys, can't you see that is taking away your power?
Yeah.
Like if we're all petrified, nothing in that is humanizing. Nothing in that is empowering. Nothing in that is showing who you truly are and the abilities that you have. And like focusing on increasing the strength of your immune system would open up so much of who you are, because you'd have to, stop, eating toxic foods. You'd have to stop drinking toxic water. You'd have to stop being around toxic people. You have to clean up your own environment. You'd have to look at the world and the toxic environment that you're in, and take a conscious decision to change that. Not just allow someone to sell you the solution that then takes more away from you. Become responsible in that. And yeah, it's an amazing opportunity to then go, okay, well, another part I've got to give up. And it's at the point now where there's not much left to give.
No. Yeah.
Like I would say, like once they flip that switch on, there is no way to turn it off.
Yeah.
Like if you buy into that artificial system so much that you're willing to have a brain chip that someone can then feed you reality directly, there will be no ability to turn that off.
I know.
It's done. It's finished. And I can't see anything else than people running and begging for it, running toward it and begging for it. And that's a shocking thing to have to live with.
It really is. And I think, one thing that has struck me is that Alan always knew end game. He knew the end game. And, maybe he talked about a brain chip. Now I tell myself to say biodigital convergence, because, will it really be a chip? Will it be, but it doesn't matter, because what it is it's a device that hooks you up to a control grid.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And from that point on, you are not sentient. You're not in control. You're not in control. And that is a scary thing, to see people just kind of walk along towards it. And not only that, but want it, demand it in one form or another.
when I was actually at uni, so 2007, a friend at uni, his brother was a online video game guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd just sit on his computer and play those online computer games. And over the years of knowing him and his brother, they lived that world where, online was a big thing and video games was a big thing, and all their
Mm-hmm.
friends, their whole social scene was built around that. And after one of Alan's talks one day about the brain chip, it really just occurred to me, like, wait a second, we're way closer than what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had the idea to go and speak to my friend's brother. And I said, if you guys could get a chip inserted into your body that would give you the ability to link to the internet and use your mind to control it, would you do it? And this table of young men, they were probably 20 years old, and there was 5 or 10 of them, they all turned around and they all said simultaneously that they would absolutely do it. And that's when, that sort of barrier came down. And you just realized, like, okay, my generation might not do that, but this next generation, they're going to beg for it. They
Mm-hmm.
already
Mm-hmm.
already been given the information that it's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
They've already shown that the system there got's antiquated, clunky, and not efficient enough.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got this one over here that only if you'd really want it, we could give it to you.
Yeah.
That absolutely blew the blinders off me, where it's like, okay, we're going into this, we're in this system where we just get like farmed until we're ready to
Mm-hmm.
agree to
Mm-hmm.
paddock. You know what I mean? We eat this paddock up until it's gone, but we consume all those ideas and we get familiarized with all those concepts until we're ready to then have that gate open and off we go into that field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My God, this is massive. This thing's massive. And it's not just now either. This isn't just something it's not just Agenda 21. This is the agenda for any period in time, going as far back as you can sift through the sand and find. It's not like this control structure has been here just because they made the movie The Matrix and showed us a little bit about it.
Right. Right.
It goes back into ancient history and beyond. I don't think you can have what's called civilization without domestication.
Mm-hmm.
And then
this is true. I think that's the beauty of a lot of Alan's talks. Definitely it comes through in his books, is the ancientness of the system. And
Yep.
the ancientness of, I always call it the agenda with a capital T and a capital A, the agenda, because there's only one agenda.
Yeah.
But it never is like people. One question that Alan used to get in the early days that I was with him by email a lot was, well, when does the big start? And as he pointed out to us, it's underway. If you look at the skyrocketing cancer rates and the plummeting fertility amongst both men and women, then in its own way, the culture, the T part of the LGBTQ. I mean, there is a component of LGBT, that Q, whatever. There's a component of it that has always been about the agenda in terms of keeping the numbers down.
Yeah.
But you see family structures created there, adopted children, artificially inseminated children. So there's still a reproduction happening there.
Yeah.
But the T component, you know, a lot of these people, not all of them, but a lot of them will end up sterile. And this is there's a big push on for that, and we're being told, oh, hey, it's it's much more than, a small percentage of the population. So but anyway, the point is, from many, many angles over a long, long time, we're under a tough. And then Alan would say, look, to a question like, well, when does the New World Order announce itself? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's always updating. It's always rolling out some element of itself. It's in it. Even things like the Fourth Industrial Revolution can be misleading because it makes you think there's like a date, and then all of a sudden everything's going to be 6 and 7G, and it's a whole new way. Well, that would be like, just think back, if you can put yourself in the mindset of the Industrial Revolution. Not everybody went into the city all at one time. Not everybody worked in a factory, but that was the dominant culture.
Yep.
And we've been in the dominant culture of, a communications culture since the advent of the computer, and that's just morphing into what will then be the next dominant system. But it's always, the great work is just always rolling out a different part of itself.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, it was like and how there's going to be this like line in the sand where there was this event,
Mm-hmm.
This side was lots of people, this side's not lots of people. That's something you come up against within yourself with all the parts of the agenda. It's like, okay, there's this thing happening now. How's that going to transition to what they're saying is going to happen in this agenda?
Right.
And to sort of sit here today trying to work that out, not being able to see how we could get to this future point where, the agenda is fulfilled. It's very hard to see, but if you keep your ears and eyes open, it starts to show itself, where I thought there's no way they could depopulate the planet. That's ridiculous. But then all of a sudden you meet people that have chosen not to have children because of the effect of people on the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there's no way that would ever happen. The amount of people I know of that have consciously chosen not to have children, that could have children, just to save the environment,
Mm-hmm.
it is so common. It's such a common conversation that you have where people are like, oh, no, we're not having kids. Oh, why is that? Well, it's an environmental issue, and all these things come up. You're like, oh, you're not just because you want to travel, or you just would rather have your own space and time to do your own thing, or like, what's the reason really is the environment, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yet there's nothing else in your daily lives that you're sacrificing to save the environment because you've got like a brand new house, a brand new car, all the appliances, all the stuff that impact the environment. You know what I mean? Like everywhere around you. But oh, no, having less people is going to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And
So
then,
I mean, there's a kind of a bitter irony there too. It's like, so you're not actually going to do anything to save the environment, right? I mean, let's just be clear about that. You're not doing anything, but then when you die, it'll be okay because, hey, there'll be nobody left, right? So, let's just trash the joint until we're gone, right?
yeah,
And then, because that's what's going on.
that's right. We don't have to change, but the children that we're not having, that will change.
That's right.
They will change it by not being.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh. So you're missing out on your full human experience
Yes.
to give people that won't be here an experience. It doesn't make much sense. I can see the logic in it, though.
This is the part of the conversation where you go, "You're right, son."
Yeah, that's why you have to.
That's a good idea.
Like I was saying before, is like when someone taps you on the shoulder to have a conversation about something, or you have to listen to what people are saying before you speak.
Yeah.
Because the things that, like, when I hear people speak, I'm doing the exact thing, just listening,
Mm-hmm.
and oh yeah, I can't say that. I just can't say it.
Yeah.
One, because I'll be even further ostracized.
Yeah.
And it's not going to make any impact. It's just going to cause a drama. It's not going to achieve anything.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to sit there and watch. You have to bear witness to it, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like that everywhere with everything. Once you sort of wake up and see something for what it truly is, or get close to what it truly is, you realize that, oh yeah, this is very few people that are seeing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there was quite a while where people would say, oh no, that's just the way you see it. And I'm like, no, this is not an opinion.
Yes.
I'm not giving you my opinion. Otherwise, I'd be an opinionated person. I'm trying to show you something that's real, that's really there, like that train on the track.
Yeah. The subjectivity conversation is a hard one for me. Oh, well, that's that's your reality. That's your truth. And it's like, I thought the place was on fire, but if it's just me that's feeling the heat and having, the smell of burning hair, okay, it's just me. That's my reality.
Like if you find up your own ideas and want to live that reality, that's fantastic. Like there's a whole reality in my head, world in my head that I would love to live, but there's nowhere to bring that out into the world. Where do you bring that out into the world? Where it just be like, no, you can't do that. No, there's someone else already that's stopping you doing that there. You'll have to pay this to get to there. You'll have to do all this to get those permits to be able to allow you to do that.
Yeah.
Like you can't even like renovate your house in this area without having to increase the size of the water treatment on the property.
Yeah.
And you can't get a permit to increase the water treatment on the property. So
I think this is why people, end up painting or doodling or writing poetry or whatever, is because there is something, that there is a vision, there's your reality that you want to put out into the world. And it becomes increasingly hard to do that in a way that's meaningful. But
absolutely. Like especially where we are at in the agenda, like we are very progressed through that agenda compared to when I first listened to Alan about that, and having to kind of digest all that information and then eventually come to see it. That's taken 20 years.
Yeah.
And in that 20 years, we've progressed so far through that agenda now that I don't know how anyone can't see it.
I know.
Because I grew up in the 90s, and anyone before that surely can remember a time where so much of this stuff around us wasn't here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very different experience. So now that we're at this point where it's everywhere you look and it's coming in faster and faster and faster, how then do you become self-expression? How do you express yourself in that when the walls are getting closer and closer and closer? I just don't understand how to be in this world when it's like that. There's the room to move now is so small. Like every time you stick your head up, someone is just going to say, what are you talking about? What do you mean? There's very little room to express, say, like a connected human expression there. It's very, very hard to do that without it being like, well, wait a second, we've got a system for that.
Right. No,
You know,
yeah.
yeah.
I know what you mean. I mean, I think if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, it would be a very isolated feeling, because at least I get to, say something or make a video or think creatively about what somebody else is saying to me. But if I was cut off from that and my whole world was just in interacting with, people who believe that it's all real, the sky is beautiful. And, I mean, it's last week on Thursday, the post office, I'm not sure if there was any other, I think probably all government agencies were closed for the day in honor of President Jimmy Carter, who had passed away. And it's something, I think they call it National Day of Mourning. And so I had noted, last week I went to the post office and I saw the notice that said, tomorrow on Thursday, the post office will be closed for National Day of Mourning. And so where that entered and left my reality was, I won't be going to the post office tomorrow. Then I checked in with my Aunt Mary and my Aunt Betty, and both of them had spent the entire day on Thursday watching the funeral, watching the memorial service in Washington, D.C., telling me about all the presidents and their wives that weren't there. Michelle Obama wasn't there, but pretty much everybody else was, and what they looked like and where they sat and who spoke and what they said. And then they transported the body down to Georgia, and they had the service and the burial, and there was a burial plot on the family plot, the Carter Private Cemetery, and they had a service at the church, and it went on all day, and both of them watched it in its entirety all day long. And then because I hadn't watched it, you see, I was failing to be a part of something that they thought was really significant. And they both told me that they were sure that I could find big parts of it on YouTube, so I should go.
Because obviously, right?
Yes, exactly. And God love them. It's, to me, it's just it was such an educational thing to hear the importance of, how important it was to them to have been almost like a participant in this National Day of Mourning. And it's just interesting when you don't have a circle or a group that is in the like mindset, and it's harder and harder to find, or you don't have an outlet for it. That you're right. The walls are closing in around us. It's
like when I moved down to the mountains here, it was because one of the main reasons was that I knew I was running out of time to do a full ski season, because I was getting older anyway. But I had a very strong feeling that something was coming that was going to stop me being able to do that. Because this was back in 2018 that this came over me. And so I raced down here, and the first season I was here was for 2019, which was when we all got locked down. So once we were, let out again, I just ran into the mountains, and I don't ever want to leave. So I spend the winters snowboarding, and snowboarding's one part of it, but really it's being in the mountains and being part of the winter and the whole thing. It's a big thing. But for the first time in my life, I joined a board riders club, and I grew up surfing, where I never joined the surf club. This time I thought, no, I'll do it. I'll get involved. And so you jump into these things thinking, oh, I'll get involved to be part of the club. And then once again, you're not. You can't be. The concepts that you have in your mind and the things that you know are so remote compared to everybody else that once again, there you are, part of the club, but you're sitting over there, just like wanting to be part of that conversation. But the conversation's about things that aren't in your reality anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, I get like watching like family get involved with the Jimmy Carter thing. Like that's just fascinating.
Yeah, it was. Wow.
It was like when the Queen died over here. Like everyone watched that thing.
Yeah.
Like the
Mm-hmm.
what was it called? The
coronation.
Oh no, not the coronation. When she died.
The
Is that
No, well, I guess that's a funeral. There's a procession, and I certainly didn't watch that one either. So,
but everyone's like, watch it. I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Like the Queen of who? Like what?
Yeah.
And then eventually I did watch it, and then you see all the occultic symbolism and ritual to it, and you're like, oh my God, how can anyone watch this and think like that's our dearly beloved Queen who cherishes her kingdom and wants the best for her subjects and all this. Oh my God. And now we got this king that everyone's been laughing at for 50 years. Like everyone's laughed at Charles for 50 years as this bumbling idiot, and now he's the king, and it's like, no, he's not the king. That's not the king. That's not a king. Like we grew up in primary school where every morning we'd sing to a picture of the Queen.
Yeah.
And now we got a king. He's been king for what, 2 years? Is it 2 years? About 2 years.
Probably, yeah.
Nothing's changed. Like the money still has the Queen's head on it. There's no statues of the king anywhere. And it's been 2 years. Like, why haven't they changed the face of the money?
Maybe they know something we don't know.
It's like a memorial silver coin with the king's head on it. But not the day of the currency. That's still got the Queen's head on it. And so it's like, are they just holding on until they eventually just go completely digital, or what's like?
It's kind of interesting because I've got one of my older brothers lived in New Zealand for a number of years. And so I guess the Christmas Day is the traditional, I didn't even really know this, but it's the Queen's speech or the King's speech or whatever every Christmas.
Right.
So we were having Christmas lunch and my brother said, well, since I am still part of the Commonwealth too, let's listen to the King's speech. So, he gets that going for us and we're watching it. And this one was kind of funny because at least my younger brother and I, at the very end of it, we almost said in unison, well, that's the end of the Christian culture. That's the end of the culture in Great Britain, don't you think? And I mean, both of it said something very similar at the same time because it was just a horribly woke Christmas message. And he made a really big point of saying that he was delivering the speech from what used to be a church. It used to be a church, and now it has been turned into, in his words, a thriving community center.
Oh.
And so it's a celebration. You see what I mean? I mean, to me, it felt really in your face. If you thought you had a culture here, if you thought that you had a common culture, get over it. We've moved on,
Yeah. We're not there anymore. So
no. So yeah.
It was the same here. Like to think like what things were like here in the 80s and the 90s, because I was born in the 70s. So to think what things were like in the 80s and the 90s contrasted to today, it's radically different.
Yeah.
And you still have those things where on Boxing Day in Australia, we have the first day of the test match versus whatever country. I'm pretty sure it's always England or whoever it is, but everybody, you do the Christmas thing, and then the next day when it's time to sort of have a bit of space, you turn the TV on and watch the cricket.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, who the hell's watching cricket anymore? You know, I don't think anyone's watching the test match anymore, but it'll be on the news and everyone will talk about it. But really, it's not like it used to be where everybody watched the cricket.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knew it. They wanted to be part of it. They knew about it. It was such a huge cultural centerpiece. You know what I mean? Like Christmas was like, okay, get a few presents, see the family, whatever. But don't forget, tomorrow the cricket's on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's always a big rush to get to the Boxing Day test match. And I don't see anyone really caring about that anymore.
No, it's, you know, they seamlessly move you until you kind of forgot, oh, it used to be like this, or this is what we used to do, or, you know.
Yeah, someone said that the other recently, something about how they've changed it from Christmas to the holiday period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think, yeah, that's so true. Like, it's not Christmas anymore, it's the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
So that means it can be whatever holiday you want it to be.
Someone sent me an email the other day, about a week or so ago, and said, did you notice that this year it was the Grinch? It wasn't Santa Claus, it was the Grinch. And I laughed, and they said it was, you know, everywhere, the Grinch who stole Christmas and everything. And it struck me as very funny because I'd had the exact same thought. You know, Santa, not like Santa really is, you know, the meaning, you know, the reason for this season or anything, but yeah, this year it was the Grinch. He's got this, you know, mean, angry look, and he's mischievous and everything. And so that's identified as, that's what Christmas means. And you're talking about the test match on Boxing Day, but if you go back 100 years ago or so, Boxing Day was always when those who had surplus at Christmas literally boxed it up and then took it to the poor. And so if you asked someone, I mean, if you ask somebody in the United States what's Boxing Day, 9 out of 10 are going to say, I have no idea. No,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it'd be the same here. It just means the day after Christmas, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or that's cricket day, right? Yeah.
Everyone says, why would you put your presents in a box? You just got them out of the box. Back in the box, would you? Unless you're going to take them back, I guess. But no, it was about giving the excess
to the people who needed it. Yeah.
Yeah. So extending that Christmas giving spirit, not just not knowing what it meant, you know, and reveling in what you got, you know. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And funny they'd use the Grinch for Christmas when he's green.
Exactly. And yeah, and the person who said this was making that same thing too. It used to be red, now it's green. Everything is green. It's very these things are significant, but we don't stop and, you know, kind of take it in and go, oh, I wonder what that means.
Yeah, because now the red's not seen anymore, like a watermelon. I love that analogy. You know, like the socialism is a watermelon. You know, green on the outside and red on the inside.
Yeah. So.
And it's
well, listen.
I
should probably get going and.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Get going too, but this has been a very enjoyable conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Now
there are people out there. Like, as much as I've said it's hard to connect with other people, there are people out there. You know,
it's hard though. Don't minimize it. You know, don't minimize it. That's not really a black mood thought. You know, it's in the best of all worlds. Really connecting is difficult in the best of times, but now we're in a place where we're so splintered. I mean, there's a word, I've said this now, I like the word atomized, you know, taken down to the smallest. That's what society is. That's how we've been kind of broken up and put off in our own echo chamber, however you want to think about it. It's this little group or that. And if you're not exactly, there's so much meanness in social media and in the way that people interact in the digital space. So much meanness with one another. There really is, because you don't agree with them, just right across the board. And so finding people that you can speak with freely without, lots of judgment attached or, urgency, or just saying, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a hard thing to find. So, but you're right, there are good people out there. There are, for sure.
I mean, like I'm talking to you, you're in America, I'm in Australia, like that's amazing. That's amazing. Like I'm so grateful. There's one more person.
Yeah.
Like I'm just so grateful that there is one person. Now that can be depressing or it can be, inspiring, And so I won't meet another person for many, many, many days.
That's it.
And at least now I know that I've had a conversation like this. It still is there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And Alan was right. The internet had a window, and for what we were told it was going to be good for, or what we hoped that it would be good for, that's over, because the censorship is real, and et cetera. But we are still using our internet and our computers to speak. It's your I am in the evening of Monday, because we're recording this before it goes up, and you are in the late morning of Tuesday. So it's a huge time difference. And yet here we are. And that's something that we would not be able to do if we didn't have the internet connection. So, I mean, we could speak to each other the old-fashioned way with a calling card and hope it wasn't too pricey, and but it's good, for now we take what we can get. I wanted to ask you though, you had sent me some pictures of your beautiful dog.
Yeah, she's right.
And some of your woodwork and so forth. I wondered if I could use those or share that, and also if there's any other pictures of anything that you've built recently or anything at all you want to send me, send a picture of the mountain or anything. I'll use it to show people what the Victorian Alps look like. Anything that you've got that you want to share.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place in the world. Like, it's a spectacular place. It really is.
That's nice.
Yeah, definitely happy to share that.
Okay. All right. Well, this will go up on Thursday. I appreciate you taking the time to and sharing this. I know that people, one of the things, because you said, well, I know there's you. So there's you and there's me and we're talking. But one of the consistent messages that I get from people is that it's very, maybe they'll say reassuring or comforting, but there is something about hearing the conversation. Maybe Alan is the common denominator, but it's something else. It's something that maybe Alan, tapped us all, and so so we got that, and we've got that we can carry forward. But I like to think of it as, Alan was big on the unique individual and the fact that we matter. We do. And so communicating with each other is important. It makes a difference.
And just like, I'll just finish by saying, for all the years that I've watched things like this, where two people just having a conversation, it's not that big of a deal, but it really is to the person who's needing to see that that's there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when I came across Alan and could see what he knew of the world, and it just gave me that hope, or gave me that direction, or gave me that inspiration to really handle it on my own, like to do it okay, this is going to be an individual pursuit that's
Mm-hmm.
it's only going to get narrower and narrower,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to get bigger from the inside, if that makes any sense. Like that inner
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
fill in, even though the outside's getting narrower. And then to think that there could be someone else out there, like Alan used to say, like he did this all for that person that would become atomized and self-destructing.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Because that was me. I was self-destructing, like in a big way.
Yeah.
And then Alan was the one that showed me that, okay, this self-destruction is because of the isolation, because of the growth, because of the way the world is, and you're waking up in that. And that's the process of what this thing is that you're embarking on, you know, like that's the deal, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, then you'd hear when he interviewed other people, or he'd be, you know, speaking on certain events, it just all gave you that, like, just gave you that inner strength. Okay, right, I can do this too, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and suffer through letting go of all this stuff, and I can handle this, I can do it, and it will be worth it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really important thing, you know, just to have this conversation. Who hears it, I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
surely it's gonna be, you know, beneficial.
Yeah, that's there's a part in his the very first volume. I like it because, you know, what you're talking about, the price that you pay to kind of go on the journey. But he says at the very end of volume 1 of the first book, let's see how quickly I can get there and how noisily. I'm so noisy at everything. But he wrote, "We are spirits descended into matter for a purpose. Understanding this and fulfilling this is the meaning of the term having life and having it more abundantly. This does not mean accumulation of products. It means doing that which is true. Truth is eternal. It cannot alter. Only truth will make you free." But I like that. I shouldn't say but. It's not qualified. I like that because that having life and having it more abundantly has nothing to do with what you have or what your position is, where you're sitting in the train, what kind of view you have out the window, you know. It's about what is inside. It's coming to terms with that. And as painful as it is, it's so liberating.
Yep,
It
absolutely.
is freedom. And that's just it's the best thing. And it kind of goes together with creativity too, you know. Not that you're going to, you know, that may not mean that, you know, it's something that you're putting out in the world like a painting or something, but it's a spontaneity. It's your spirit's communication with you and to the world. And it's something that you only get by paying that price, which can be, it's a trip. It's a roller coaster.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, there's definitely a price to pay for it. Whether, I don't know if that's going to turn out to be worth it in the end, but you know, it definitely is. It's just,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know about the end. I haven't gotten there yet, but for me, the price is definitely worth it because the hollow that I had, the feeling that somehow it just, is this all there is to life? I mean, that all of that left, you know, there was a complete sense of I'm going in the right direction.
yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm headed in the right direction, and that really feels good. But I will say that I'll include some pictures of
Yeah,
Brian's
cool.
great dog. He's got a beautiful dog and also some not really nice woodwork. And anything else he sends will be a surprise to me, and I will share that with you on this video. And I thank you for listening. if you're just listening, and for watching. And next week, I will be speaking with, I'm going to actually have to tell you, I know that next week I'm talking to Allison, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation. So Allison is in the USA, and that's all I'm going to tell you about Allison. So, all right. Nice to talk to you. Nice to share this with everybody, and thanks for being here.
No problem. Thank you.
Well, you better listen, my sisters and brothers, 'cause if you do, you can hear there are voices still calling across the years, and they're all crying across the ocean, and they're crying across the land, and they will till we all come to understand. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. And there are people still in darkness, and they just can't see the light. If you don't say it's wrong, then that says it's right. We got to try to feel for each other. Let our brothers know that we care. Got to get the message, send it out loud and clear. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. Now I swear your salvation isn't too hard to find. None of us can find it on our own. We've got to join together in spirit, heart, and mind, so that every soul who's suffering will know that we're not alone. None of us are free. None of us are free, y'all. None of us are free, and one of us are chained. None of us are free. If you just look around you, you're gonna see what I say. 'Cause the world is getting smaller each passing day. Now it's time to start making changes, and it's time for us all to realize that the truth is shining bright right before our eyes. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free, and one of us is chained. None of us are free. Oh, none of us are free. Oh, my. None of us are free. No, none of us are free. One of us is chained. One of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. The one of us is chained. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. No. None of us are free. One of us is chained. Oh, Lord. None of us are free. Oh, Lord. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free.